Wee-Wee-Quedong is home to the Chippewa of Kettle and Stony Point First Nations. This landscape is untouched since the last glacial ice age and rich in story. It is a field of archaeological artifacts and unusual spherical rocks called kettles that are also known as thunderbird eggs. I set out to explore Ontario through First Nations artifacts, landscape, and geology. On speaking with a community elder, I discovered that the story of Kettle Point is not mine to tell. This sacred site remains preserved, but others have been erased by settlement. This land on which we are gathered was the traditional land of many nations, including the Mississauga of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Wendat, and the Haudenosaunee people. Today, this meeting place is still home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island. Acknowledging the land is an Indigenous protocol used to express gratitude and appreciation to those who have lived and worked on the land historically and presently. I appreciate the unique relationship that we each hold with the land, and it is my privilege to share with you my project.
Cultural landscapes, past and present, can be known in three ways, whether by local peoples or outsiders. People make sense of landscape by living it, by discussing it, and by imagining it.
During the last glaciation period, the Laurentine ice sheet covered all of Ontario. Over thousands of years, the ice sheet receded, revealing new landforms. In the beginning, there was no world as we know it. No people or land, but only a great ocean. Far above this ocean was a Skyworld inhabited by godlike creatures who were like the Haudenosaunee people themselves. In this world lived a man and his wife, who was expecting a child. In the middle of Skyworld grew a great tree which had enormous roots, and it had grown there forever. This was a sacred tree that had stood at the very center of the universe. Any of the beings who lived in Skyworld were not supposed to harm or disfigure this great tree in any way. But the pregnant woman decided that she wanted some bark from this tree, possibly as a means of making some medicine. The woman pestered her husband to get some of the great tree's bark for her. This was against his better judgment, but he eventually relented and began to dig a hole among the roots of the tree. The husband was not aware that the ground of Skyworld was rather thin, and before long he broke a hole through it. When he told his wife of this discovery, she became curious, and looking through the exposed area saw the ocean far below. The wife then proceeded to stick her head through this hole, and fell. Although this ocean world did not contain animals or people, great flocks of birds flew about. When these birds saw the woman falling towards the ocean, they spread their wings, interlocking with one another, forming a great feathery raft that supported the woman. The birds had trouble supporting her, so they called out for help to a giant sea turtle from the ocean, who agreed to support the woman on his back. This turtle then began to float about the huge ocean while supporting the woman. The back of the turtle was a great area. With the help of a muskrat, some soil was dug up from the ocean floor, which ultimately expanded as the earth grew. Many First Nations traded over long distances along well-established trade routes for thousands of years. The market economy included specialized production of goods, public infrastructure, laws, property rights, and universal trading languages. The perishable goods have all but disappeared, but finished products such as tools, tokens, and accessories still remain as storied artifacts. Through trade, goods have exchanged hands many times in between community groups. These artifacts have been found thousands of miles away from their origin. Southern Ontario was home to the Wendat, Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee nations. During the 16th century, the Wendat were the center of a well-developed trade system and used many routes to connect with different nations. Their main trading partners appear to be the Anishinaabe groups to the north and east. For thousands of years, the Carrying Place Trail existed between what is now Toronto and Lake Simcoe. This was a major route of a regional network with branch trails along the Don and Rouge rivers. The Carrying Place Trail and land portage connected Lake Ontario to Georgian Bay and was shorter than going around the Ontario Peninsula. It connected the East Coast with Central America on the Parries and in the Mississippi River basin. From the mouth of the Humber River along the shore of Lake Ontario, travelers climbed to the top of a high, dry ridge to find the footpath that many had walked before them. The Carrying Place Trail followed the top of a dry ridge, marking the former edge of glacial Lake Iroquois. The dry sandy plains overlooking the river valley were dotted with oak savannas, pine barrens, and tall grass prairies. The Carrying Place Trail followed the natural contours of the landscape, avoiding the low and wet valley lands and difficult water crossings. The trail then entered old-growth northern hardwood forest. Traveling northward, the forest path sloped steadily upwards to the Oak Ridge Moraine, 230 meters above Lake Ontario, and the drainage divide between Lake Ontario and Georgian Bay. The route took advantage of where the moraine narrows and descended on the other side into the Holland Marsh, a former embayment of glacial Lake Algonquin. On reaching the tributary of the Holland River, the Carrying Place Trail became a water route to Lake Simcoe. Toronto is located at a prominent crossroads. It was established in 1793 as York by Lieutenant Governor Simcoe. Not long after, he traveled the Carrying Place Trail and commissioned a military road to connect Toronto to Lake Simcoe. The new road would be straight for maximum efficiency and was named Yonge Street. Construction began in 1795, rendering the Carrying Place Trail obsolete. In 1852, the Toronto, Simcoe, and Huron Railway was built, and in 1952, Highway 400 opened. The Carrying Place Trail is gone. Scattered monuments sit in the landscape, reference the trail, but do not mark its original path. Along Lake Ontario, at the mouth of the Humber River, several settlements existed to facilitate trade. In the 1600s, there was an Iroquois village called Te-a-Agon, and later a Mississauga village. In 1750, the first Fort Toronto was built, followed by another Fort Woolly at the current C&E grounds in 1751. Later, John Rousseau built a trading post in 1790, and York, now Toronto, was established 3 years later in 1793. The first Fort Toronto and John Rousseau House at the mouth of the Humber River is now a Petro-Canada. The Iroquois village Te-a-Agon was abandoned in the 1680s for unknown reasons. The land was developed in the early 1900s into an exclusive subdivision and the private Babby Point Club for tennis and lawn bowling. West of Newmarket is the Carrying Place Trail golf course and a 1.8-kilometer long residential street lined by neoclassical mansions. The northern terminus of the trail was surveyed at the boundary of the Toronto Purchase, now Highway 9. Here the Holland Marsh was drained in 1925 to become farmland. All that remains of the trail is a monument beside a parking lot. Discovery is understanding or uncovering something for the first time. It is also refinding something that has been forgotten. Sustained development has erased historic markers, leaving scattered remnants in a fragmented landscape. These fragments are an archipelago, artifacts and stories lost to an ocean of time. How can architecture enable the discovery of old values, new thoughts, and make new connections between people, community, and place? What can we discover? The erasure of the Carrying Place Trail obscures a pivotal moment in history, but the memory of the Carrying Place Trail remains. What would it take to walk the trail? I walked part of the Humber River Recreational Trail, which is nearly continuous from Lakeshore to Highway 407, north of which different trail systems could be stitched together. The final stretch would be a new trail that weaves through woodlots and conservation areas, avoiding farmland. If the trail extended to Lake Simcoe at Cook's Bay, roughly a third of the trail is already walkable. The other 60 kilometers could very reasonably be built by municipalities and local community groups. Layered beneath a present urban map is an existing topographic landform that has been disruptively cut. How does the spirit of the trail live on? I propose a series of 4 stations along a Carrying Place Trail at significant moments of erasure. Each station is a landscape disruptively cut where the past is unearthed by material sourced from the original trail. For each of these models, I ask visitors to contribute a piece back to each world as an act of rebuilding. At the mouth of the Humber River, the trading post and now gas station is on a prominent rise. This is a gateway to the Humber River where the prow of birchbark canoes would have come ashore. Station 1 is a place to see the landscape. Indigenous knowledge and goods are sold at a store. A canoe prow launches over the Humber River to view the landscape. The Humber River Recreational Trail follows the river to a circle of stones marking a meeting place that commemorates the village of Teatagon. Station 2 is a place to feel the landscape. It situates the different landscapes of the trail under a canopy of rings that weaves among the trees. At one end, a water pond recognizes the lakes at each terminus of the trail. Crossing grasslands, forests, limestone moraines, and wetlands, the other end of the installation is a gathering place for telling stories. This allows visitors to experience the different landscapes of the trail and then to collect in conversation. The Caring Place Golf Course is an artificial landscape for the bourgeois where once natural forests and savannas contributed to biodiverse ecosystems. Station 3 is a place of aromas. It replaces the golf course with a nature camp surrounded by new growth forests, grasslands, flowers, cedar, and herbs. The camp is an ecological, diverse landscape. Like the indigenous villages that would relocate periodically, the camp shifts annually to allow the land to recover. The Holland Marsh is cut off by highways and artificial canals. The canal feeds into a tributary of the Holland River that leads to Lake Simcoe, which was once called Toronto. Toronto is commonly interpreted as trees standing in water, referring to a significant meeting place or the fish weirs at the far end of the lake. Station 4 is a place to listen. A bridge crosses the boundary canal and enters the Portage Village Swamp Conservation Area, where a boardwalk connects a series of devices that amplify the sounds of the landscape. In summary, this project focuses on issues of sustained development that have erased historic markers, leaving scattered remnants in a fragmented landscape. How can architecture enable the discovery of old values, new thoughts, and make new connections between people, community, and place? Each site is a gathering place that recognizes the land and allows for people of all nations in the community to rediscover fragmented islands in the archipelago. They address past and present cultural landscapes by entering worlds within.